I believe that there is a spectrum in regards to assisted suicide. Now, when we think of that, I guess the term is euthanasia, when we think of assisted suicide, I think of back in the 90s when there was this concept of this becoming a little bit more in the headlines and a little bit more accepted mainstream. This idea of someone who is very old and suffering from cancer, and let them die with dignity. Let this doctor inject them with the poison and let them go out that way. That way they themselves are not committing suicide, it's assisted. And if there's the concept that you go straight to hell if you kill yourself, then we kind of get one around God. Gotcha, God, I didn't actually kill myself, it was the doctor. So assisted suicide. So in some circumstances, you can kind of understand that. In fact, I indirectly knew this guy. He was the grandfather of someone I grew up with. He was, I guess, in his 70s, his later 60s. He had some kind of very painful cancer. I want to say brain cancer. He went out into the woods and he pulled the shotgun and he took his own life. He was in so much pain. I can understand that. I don't judge him for that. I think there's moral ambiguity there, and that's why I like talking about it. So if we were to think, well, what exactly is the spectrum? Well, on the other side of the spectrum would be a person who simply just didn't care to take care of themselves, their body. You know me, I'm pushing 40, but I'm running, I'm working out, I'm doing my best to eat right, I'm not eating junk food and fast food and drinking sodas. That's not me. And I'm always going to be that way. I'm always going to want to do my best to prevent cancer and diabetes and a lot of preventable ailments just by taking care of myself and making that effort. That's a huge part of my identity. But if I wasn't, then in theory, there's this, I feel like it's on the spectrum of like, if you're not really trying to take care of yourself and you're kind of letting yourself go and you don't care about what you eat and you're not exercising and you're not taking care of your body, it's just kind of speeding up the whole process of the likelihood that you're going to die earlier. It's like a subconscious death wish of sorts. Okay, so if that's on one side of the spectrum and the other is flat out assisted suicide, in the middle, what would be in the middle? Well, as you get older especially, what if you do have to ultimately require certain medications to stay alive and well? Maybe as you, let's see, I don't know, like in your 50s or 60s, 70s, you have to start taking medications for your heart so that you will stay alive and be well, or your blood pressure, or diabetes, whatever it is. You survive as long as you take your medicine, and that becomes normal. We know that. In American culture, it's assumed that when you get older, you've got to have your medications. You've got to survive off of that. Well, that's more of a modern miracle / problem, because 100 years ago, people just died. There wasn't pills that they could take for their heart or their blood pressure or whatever it is, and they just died. So it makes me think of this concept of somebody's in a car wreck and they're in a coma for however many days. How many days until we pull the plug? What did they want? Did they want the plug to be pulled? Or did they only want a few days and then pull the plug? Would they have lived? So it's almost a version of assisted suicide because, well, but then they're only surviving because they're plugged into the machine. Well, take that concept with medication though. If you have to have a medication as you're getting older to survive, if you simply refuse to take that medication, is that kind of like assisted suicide? Is that somewhere on the spectrum of ultimately choosing to die? Now, yes, there is the assisted suicide, and yes, there is the guy that had cancer and pulled the shotgun in his head. There's those things, but I think there's a spectrum. I think we have responsibility to not only take care of ourselves, but then eventually, well, we're going to have to take medicine to survive. And if we don't, is that sort of like suicide? I think this is very interesting. Do you? If you do, you'll leave a comment and maybe a spin-off video will be made and I'll talk about it more, because this is something I care about. This is morally challenging. Is suicide wrong? Yeah. I think most people would agree suicide is wrong. But what exactly is suicide if you can prevent from dying, that's ultimately another way of asking the question. Your comments belong right here.